The quantum fold gates of station shimmered with residual Cherenkov radiation as Anna's sleek diplomatic cruiser materialized in the docking bay. The Dragon Queen of the Draconis sovereignty stepped onto the polished titanium composite floor, her elongated form casting multiple shadows under the bioluminescent panels. Her scales, iridescent plates of bioengineered keratin interwoven with graphene, caught the light, refracting it into cascades of emerald and gold. Anna had ruled the Draconis sovereignty for 3 centuries, ever since the Great Uplift had transformed her species from territorial predators into one of the galaxy's premier civilizations. Her people had mastered fusion reactors when humanity was still burning fossil fuels, had developed faster-than-light travel through quantum entanglement tunneling, while humans were launching primitive chemical rockets. The Draconis were superior in every measurable way, longer-lived, more intelligent, technologically advanced. Or so she had always believed. "Your Majesty," her aide Thex hissed softly through his translator implant. "The master craftsman awaits in Workshop 7. Shall I announce you?" Anna waved a taloned hand dismissively. "That won't be necessary. I prefer to observe first." The request had come through official channels 3 weeks prior. The Galactic Council needed someone to repair the Nexus Array, the massive quantum computing network that coordinated jumpgate traffic across 17 sectors. The array had begun experiencing cascade failures, probability matrices collapsing, entangled particles losing coherence. 63 species had tried and failed to diagnose the problem. Ships were stranded. Trade routes were collapsing. Panic was spreading. Then someone had mentioned a human. A single human working out of a forgotten station in the Outer Rim, who had a reputation for solving impossible problems. Anna had volunteered to retrieve him personally. The sovereignty needed the Nexus operational, and besides, she was curious. Humans had only achieved interstellar capability 40 years ago, after the Draconis had shared quantum fold technology with them out of what Anna's advisors called charitable obligation. They were primitives, barely worth notice. Yet this one had apparently accomplished what 63 advanced species could not. Workshop 7 occupied an entire deck of the station, a cavernous space filled with the organized chaos of serious engineering work. Holographic displays floated in midair, showing probability clouds and quantum state diagrams. Fabrication units hummed, assembling components at the molecular level. The air itself seemed to vibrate with potential energy. And there, in the center of it all, stood Lewis. Anna's double heart stopped. She hadn't seen him in 40 years. Not since the day she'd signed the dissolution papers, her stylus scratching across the haptic tablet while Lewis had stood silent, his face unreadable. The marriage had been a political arrangement, of course, a gesture of goodwill between species, orchestrated by the Galactic Council during humanity's integration period. Anna had agreed because it was her duty. Lewis had agreed for reasons she'd never fully understood. They'd lived together for 5 years in the sovereignty's capital. 5 years of polite conversations and separate quarters, and the slowly dawning realization that they inhabited fundamentally different worlds. Anna had tried to teach him Draconis philosophy, their advanced mathematical frameworks, their superior cultural achievements. Lewis had listened patiently and said little. In the end, Anna had concluded that the gap was simply too wide. Humans were too young, too primitive, too limited in their understanding. She'd filed for dissolution, and Lewis had returned to Earth without protest. Now he stood before a holographic representation of the Nexus Array, his fingers dancing through the light, manipulating equations that Anna struggled to follow. He wore simple coveralls, grease-stained at the knees. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but his eyes, those impossibly blue human eyes, still held that same quiet intensity she remembered. "The problem," Lewis was saying to someone off-screen, a Vrelnian engineer, judging by the clicking sounds, "isn't with the quantum processors. Everyone's been looking at the entanglement matrices, but that's not where the failure originates." "Then where?" The Vrelnian clicked impatiently. Lewis zoomed in on a section of the array that Anna recognized as the timing synchronization substrate. Here, the temporal calibration isn't accounting for relativistic drift across the network. Each node experiences time slightly differently due to local gravitational fields, and over 70 years of operation, those microsecond differences have compounded. The probability calculations are perfect. They're just being applied to slightly desynchronized quantum states. The Vrelnian engineer was silent for a moment. That's impossible. The temporal variance would be on the order of femtoseconds. No species has the precision to measure. Humans do, Lewis said simply. He pulled up another display showing atomic clock arrays. We've been obsessed with precision timekeeping for centuries. Started with navigation. We needed it to cross our oceans. Then we built GPS satellites and needed even more precision. Then quantum communications. We've got atomic clocks accurate to 1 second in 30 billion years. Anna felt something cold settle in her chest. The Draconis had advanced quantum computing, yes, but their timekeeping had always been adequate. They'd never needed femtosecond precision because their natural perception of time was slower, more flexible. Why obsess over microseconds when you lived for centuries? But humans, with their brief mayfly lives, had learned to slice time into infinitesimal fragments. The fix, Lewis continued, requires recalibrating every node in the network to a master clock, then implementing dynamic temporal adjustment algorithms. I've already written the code. Should take about 6 hours to propagate through the system. 6 hours. The Vrelnian sounded incredulous. The Council's best programmers estimated 6 months. Lewis shrugged. I simplified the algorithm. Most of what they wrote was redundant. Anna stepped forward before she could stop herself. Lewis. He turned, and for a moment something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps, or pain, or both. Then his expression smoothed into professional courtesy. Anna, Your Majesty, I didn't expect to see you here. The Council asked me to escort you to the Nexus array personally, she said, adding how formal she sounded. They said you were humanity's best hope for solving the crisis. Not humanity's, Lewis corrected gently. Just me. I'm just a mechanic, Anna. I fix things. You've done more than fix things. She gestured at the holographic displays. You've solved a problem that stumped the galaxy's finest minds. Because they were too smart, Lewis said. He walked to one of the fabrication units and began assembling components with practiced ease. They were looking for elegant solutions, quantum-level innovations, revolutionary new approaches. Sometimes the answer is just better accounting, better attention to detail, better clocks. Anna watched him work, and memories surfaced unbidden. Lewis in their apartment in the capital, taking apart a malfunctioning environmental control system that Draconis engineers had declared irreparable. Lewis fixing it in 20 minutes, explaining that someone had simply installed a sensor backward. The engineers had been embarrassed, dismissive. How could a human notice what they had missed? Why did you never tell me? Anna asked quietly. During our marriage, why didn't you tell me you could do this? Lewis didn't look up from his work. You never asked. You were always teaching me about Draconis achievements, your fusion technology, your jump gates, your philosophy. I listened because it was fascinating, but you never wanted to hear about what humans could do. The words struck like a plasma bolt. We were trying to help you, to uplift you. I know. Lewis's voice was gentle, not accusing. And we appreciate it, we really do. But Anna, we're not primitives just because we're young. We're different. We've spent our entire evolutionary history solving problems in our own way. We didn't have 3-century lifespans to perfect our solutions. We had to innovate fast, fail fast, iterate constantly. He held up a component, examining it against the light. Draconis technology is beautiful, elegant, perfect, but it's also rigid. When it breaks, you need specialists who understand the underlying quantum mathematics. Human technology is rougher, more modular, more fault-tolerant. We build things expecting them to fail, so we design them to be fixed. Anna felt something shifting in her understanding of the universe. The other species that tried to repair the Nexus, they were all trying to redesign it, to improve it. Exactly. They were engineers, I'm a mechanic. There's a difference. She watched him work in silence for several minutes, seeing him, truly seeing him, perhaps for the first time. The careful precision of his movements. The way he tested each component before integration. The systematic methodology that seemed almost meditative. I made a mistake, Anna said finally. When we were married, I thought I was the superior one. I thought I had everything to teach and nothing to learn. Lewis paused in his work. You weren't entirely wrong. You did have a lot to teach. I learned more in those 5 years than in my entire education before that. But I never learned from you. No, he agreed, you didn't. The pain in her chest intensified. I'm sorry. Lewis set down his tools and turned to face her fully. Those blue eyes met hers with a directness that the Draconis, with their more hierarchical culture, rarely managed. I know you are, and I forgive you, but Anna, you need to understand something. This, he gestured at the workshop, the displays, the components, this isn't about proving humans are superior to Draconis. We're not. In most ways, we probably never will be, but we're not inferior either. We're just different. And the galaxy needs different. The Council is already talking about commissioning you for other projects, Anna said. The Vrelnian diplomatic fleet has a navigation system that's been glitching. The Zephlon medical stations need someone to redesign their supply chain logistics. Lewis smiled slightly. I've got a waiting list 3 years long. Turns out that when you've spent 10,000 years developing perfect technology, you don't develop very good maintenance protocols. Nobody in the galaxy knows how to fix things anymore, except humans. We've been fixing broken things since we lived in caves. Anna felt pride and regret warring in her chest. Pride that humanity was finding its place in the galactic community, not as imitators of superior species, but as unique contributors with their own strengths. Regret that she'd been too blind to see it when it mattered. Lewis, she said carefully, when you finish here, would you consider visiting the Sovereignty? Not as my husband, I know that's over, but as a consultant. We have fusion reactors that are experiencing efficiency losses. Our engineers can't diagnose why. He studied her for a long moment. Are you asking because you need a mechanic or because you want to learn? Both, Anna admitted, mostly the second. Lewis's smile widened slightly. Then yes, I'll come, but on one condition. Name it. You have to show me how everything works, not just the broken parts, everything. I want to understand Draconis engineering from the ground up, and in exchange, I'll show you human methodology. Fair trade. Anna felt her secondary heart, the one that Draconis reserved for emotional bonding, flutter with something she hadn't felt in 40 years. Fair trade. Lewis returned to his work, and Anna settled in to watch, asking questions this time instead of delivering lectures. He explained his diagnostic process, the systematic elimination of variables, the importance of baseline measurements. She shared insights into quantum field theory that made him pause and recalibrate his approach. Together, they refined the temporal synchronization algorithm, making it 18% more efficient than Lewis's original design. 6 hours later, the Nexus array came back online. Jump gates across 17 sectors resumed normal operation. 63 species breathed sighs of relief. And in Workshop 7 on Station Kepler 442, a dragon queen and a human mechanic sat side by side, sharing a meal of protein bars and discussing the finer points of quantum error correction, learning what they should have learned 40 years earlier. That wisdom doesn't require centuries of life experience, that different doesn't mean inferior, and that sometimes the most elegant solution is the one that works. 3 months later, Lewis arrived at the Draconis Sovereignty's capital. Anna met him at the spaceport personally, no longer embarrassed to be seen with a human. She introduced him to her chief engineers as the finest diagnostic specialist in the galaxy, and watched with quiet satisfaction as Lewis proceeded to identify 14 systemic inefficiencies in their fusion reactor networks in his first week. The engineers were resistant at first, skeptical of human methodology. But when Lewis fixed a century-old reactor in 3 days, a reactor that had been scheduled for complete replacement, they began to listen. More importantly, they began to learn. Anna learned too. She learned that her people's elegant mathematics sometimes missed practical realities. She learned that human iterative design philosophy had value. She learned that 40 years of technological advancement could be trumped by 40,000 years of evolution spent solving problems under pressure. Most of all, she learned that love, even the quiet, professional respect that she and Lewis had rebuilt, didn't require sameness. It required recognition, seeing the other person not as they should be, but as they are. On Lewis's last day in the Sovereignty, before he returned to his workshop to tackle the next impossible problem, Anna walked with him through the capital's gardens. The bioluminescent flowers cast shifting patterns of light across his face. "Thank you," she said, "for coming, for teaching us." "Thank you for asking," Lewis replied, "for being willing to learn." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two beings from different worlds who had finally found common ground. "Lewis," Anna said quietly, "if you ever want to stay longer, if you ever want to." "I know," he interrupted gently. "But Anna, I'm not that person anymore. Neither are you. We're better as colleagues than we ever were as spouses." She nodded, accepting the truth of it. "Then colleagues, friends." "Friends," Lewis agreed. "And I'll always answer when you call. The galaxy needs more collaboration between our species, not less." He left the next morning, his ship disappearing into the quantum fold gates. Anna returned to her duties as queen, but now she saw her role differently, not as the ruler of a superior species, but as the leader of one thread in the great tapestry of galactic civilization. And when her engineers encountered problems they couldn't solve, she taught them what Lewis had taught her. Sometimes the answer isn't to be smarter, but to be different. Sometimes the most advanced solution is to go back to basics. Sometimes the primitive approach is the one that works. Humanity, it turned out, wasn't catching up to the galaxy. The galaxy was finally catching up to humanity.